Why had the jungle gone so quiet? Captain Maya Santos froze mid-step, her boot sinking into the soft earth, sweat rolling down her temples, her breath caught in her throat. For hours the Amazon had been alive with its constant orchestra of sounds, birds screeching, insects humming, leaves shifting under the weight of hidden things. But now, silence. As if the jungle itself was holding its breath, and Maya knew enough to fear silence more than noise. She shifted her weight, tightening her grip on the survival knife strapped to her thigh. Somewhere out there, something was watching her. She felt it, the way soldiers feel an ambush before the first shot is fired. But this was no battlefield. This was the green hell. And it was only day one. Hours earlier, she'd been in the air, the thrum of helicopter blades steady in her bones, her team strapped in beside her. A routine reconnaissance mission, they had called it. Just another set of eyes scanning the endless rainforest below for signs of a terrorist training camp rumored to be hiding here, deep where maps turned vague and the trees devoured light. Maya had flown missions before: sniper overwatch, extraction escort, covert supply drops. But this one felt different, heavier somehow. She hadn't said it out loud, but in her gut she knew. The jungle didn't forgive intruders. The missile had come without warning. A hiss in the sky, then fire. Metal screaming as the world turned upside down. Her last memory of the cockpit was the pilot jerking the stick, cursing under his breath, the sudden bloom of heat, and then impact. When Maya clawed her way out of the twisted wreckage, she was the only one left breathing. Her pilot gone, her brothers in arms gone. Their dog tags pressed into her palm, now heavy against her chest like promises she wasn't sure she could keep. The wreckage was a beacon, she knew that. Smoke curling into the sky, a signal for every enemy fighter within miles. They would be coming, armed, coordinated, relentless. She had two choices: wait for a rescue that might never come, or disappear into the jungle and pray she could outlast both man and beast. She chose the jungle. Now, hours later, she crouched low, ears straining against the silence. Something shifted in the shadows, and for the briefest heartbeat she thought she saw it, two golden eyes unblinking staring at her from the undergrowth. Jaguars, the kings of this domain, predators that could stalk for miles, silent as falling ash. She didn't move, didn't breathe. The jaguar didn't advance, only studied her as though weighing the choice: prey or problem. Finally, with a flick of its tail, it melted back into the green, vanishing so completely it might never have existed. Maya exhaled slowly, her body trembling. The jungle had made its introduction. But the jaguar wasn't the only predator hunting tonight. 3 hours later, she heard them. Voices in the distance, radio chatter crackling, boots breaking branches. Enemy search teams had reached the crash site. Her 2-hour head start was evaporating fast. She adjusted the strap of her pack, bare essentials only: a survival knife, water purification tablets, minimal medical supplies, a few protein bars, nothing more. Everything else had burned, shattered, or been too heavy to carry. And still the weight pressed on her shoulders like stone, not the supplies, the silence of her fallen comrades. Their dog tags clinked faintly with her every step, a reminder. She would not let them stay here nameless in this green grave. She would carry them out, somehow. But first she had to live. The jungle fought her with every step. Vines tangled her boots, roots rose like traps, the air itself thick with humidity that pressed against her lungs. Within minutes her clothes were soaked, her body already straining. 90 degrees of heat. Walls of moisture that stuck to her skin like a second uniform. Every breath felt stolen. Yet the heat was nothing compared to the fear. Behind her, enemy trackers fanned out. They had numbers, dogs, weapons, time. She had only what she carried and what she could improvise. So she vanished. She began moving like a shadow, weaving through streams to wash her scent, careful not to snap branches that could betray her trail. Every decision measured, every risk weighed. Her training kicked in, the drills from the Jungle Warfare Center, the endless lectures on survival and adaptation. But training was one thing. Living it alone, with death pressing from every side, That was something else entirely. That night when darkness folded over the rainforest, Maya didn't sleep. She couldn't. The air filled with new sounds, howler monkeys screaming like tortured souls, insects buzzing so loud they seemed to vibrate inside her skull. Somewhere close, the deep cough of a big cat. Somewhere closer still, the bark of dogs. She climbed a tree, binding herself with rope to keep from falling. From her perch, she watched the glow of enemy flashlights sweep below. Voices called in Portuguese and Spanish. Laughter, even. They thought she was already theirs. One soldier shone his light upward, straight toward her tree. Her chest tightened. She pressed herself flat, barely daring to breathe. If his beam moved just a fraction higher, he would see her silhouette, her eyes. But the light dropped away and the patrol moved on, their radios crackling. Maya closed her eyes, but not from relief. From the weight of knowing this was only the beginning. The jungle didn't want her here. The enemy didn't want her alive. Every direction was death. And still, she clung to one thought, one anchor. I have to return their tags. I have to make it out. Hours stretched into dawn and dawn into another day. Her body weakened with hunger, her throat scraped with thirst, but she pressed on. Each step into the jungle was a step deeper into hell, yet also, strangely, a step into something she couldn't name, something like belonging. Because as much as the jungle tried to kill her, it also whispered secrets to those who listened. The crackle of leaves warning her of snakes, the subtle shift of birds alerting her to intruders, the shimmer of water in filtered light, promising life and disease in equal measure. On the third day, she found herself frozen again, not from silence this time, but from sound. A low rumble, almost like thunder, rolling through the canopy. She turned slowly, every nerve burning. And there it was, a jaguar, not hidden this time, not curious, stalking. It moved parallel to her, muscles rippling beneath its spotted coat, golden eyes locked on hers. A duel between hunters, separated only by patience. Maya gripped her knife, though she knew it would mean nothing against a predator like this. Minutes stretched like hours. Sweat stung her eyes, her breath caught in shallow bursts. And then, just as sudden, it stopped. The jaguar's ears twitched, its gaze shifted. With one effortless motion, it turned and melted back into the jungle, gone. But she knew what it meant. She wasn't just prey to the enemy. She was prey to the land itself. That night her dreams were jaguar eyes. Her waking was enemy dogs. Her only prayer, silent, clenched in her teeth, was that tomorrow would bring her closer to safety. But the jungle had other plans. Because the Amazon doesn't let go of its prey so easily, why was she still alive? That was the question that gnawed at Maya as the sun rose on her fourth morning. She sat with her back pressed against the base of a strangler fig, her chest heaving, her knife resting across her knees. The jungle had given her nothing but hunger and fear, and yet somehow it had not taken her. Not yet. Her lips cracked as she sipped from a canteen, the water tasting faintly metallic even after purification. She closed her eyes and listened. The jungle was alive again, birds shrieking, monkeys crashing through branches, insects drilling into the air. But underneath the noise there was always something else. A rhythm, a pattern, a pulse. The jungle itself. And Maya had begun to realize she would have to learn that pulse, or she would die. Her body ached from the climb the night before, from the rope digging into her ribs as she slept lashed to a branch. She had rested but not slept. Dreams of fire and twisted metal stalked her, dreams of her team's final screams swallowed by the crash. When she woke, the dog tags pressed against her chest like accusations. Why them, why not her? She shoved the thought down and stood. Reflection was a luxury, movement meant survival. Her pace was slow, deliberate. Every few steps she paused, scanning the canopy, the ground, the air itself. She walked not as a soldier now, but as something smaller, more primal. She wasn't here to conquer the jungle. She was here to slip through it like a shadow, to become invisible even to her own thoughts. By midday she found water, a narrow stream dark with silt. Her throat burned, but memory whispered caution. Not all water was life. Some of it was death disguised as clarity. She crouched, filling her container, slipping a purification tablet inside. As she waited, she caught movement in her periphery. She turned, knife raised, too late. The swarm hit her boots first. Army ants, millions of them, a living black carpet surging through the undergrowth. They didn't care about her mission, her grief, her survival. They only cared about meat, flesh, anything that moved. Maya stumbled back, heart hammering, the sound of the swarm like crackling fire. Ants climbed her legs, biting, tearing at her skin with their mandibles. She slapped them off, pain stabbing through her calves. Instinct roared louder than fear. Water, get to water. She dove into the stream, the cold biting into her body as she thrashed, scrubbing at her legs. Ants floated away in clusters, some still clinging, still biting. She clawed them off, gasping, water filling her nose and mouth. Finally silence again, not peace, just the silence after chaos. She crawled onto the bank, legs stinging, bites swelling in angry welts. Her knife trembled in her hand. She wanted to scream. Instead, she bit her lip until she tasted blood. She couldn't afford noise, couldn't afford weakness. But she could feel it deep inside her chest, an ache, not from the ants, from the truth she didn't want to face. She was breaking. The jungle was stripping her layer by layer, peeling away the soldier, the survivor, the woman who had once believed she could control outcomes with enough training, enough willpower. Out here, willpower was a spark. The jungle was the storm. By nightfall, the storm shifted again. She heard them before she saw them, dogs. Their barks carried through the trees, closer this time. The enemy was adapting, pressing harder. She knelt in the stream, washing her legs, and froze as the barking sharpened. They were tracking her. Her mind raced. Training, instinct, desperation all collided. Dogs meant scent. She needed to break her trail. She splashed upstream, careful not to leave the water, moving fast but quiet. The current tugged at her boots, mud sucking at her soles. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time was elastic in the jungle, stretching and snapping at will. The barking grew louder, then fainter, then vanished. For now. She climbed onto the far bank and collapsed, chest heaving. Every breath burned. She wanted to rest, to close her eyes, to just stop. But she couldn't. Because somewhere in the darkness, men with rifles were waiting for her to falter. Somewhere in the branches, golden eyes still watched, calculating. And somewhere deep inside her, beneath the exhaustion and hunger, something else was stirring. Not strength, not hope, something harder, something colder. She remembered the look in the Jaguars' eyes, the calculation, the patience. It hadn't given up. It had decided she wasn't worth the risk yet. And in a way, she understood. Predators didn't waste energy. Predators adapted. Predators endured. If she wanted to live, she couldn't be prey anymore. She had to learn. The jungle didn't care about her mission, her promises, her guilt. It respected only those who listened, only those who adapted. So she began listening. Day after day, she tracked the sounds. She learned the difference between the rustle of a lizard and the slither of a snake. She tasted plants carefully, spitting out the bitter, swallowing the bland. She sharpened sticks into probes, testing every patch of earth before stepping. She wove branches into camouflage, pressing herself into the land until even she almost couldn't see herself. And slowly something changed. Her body, though thinner, moved with a rhythm not taught in any classroom. Her ears twitched at danger before her eyes confirmed it. Her fear became sharper, more precise. It didn't paralyze her anymore. It guided her. Yet even as she adapted, the jungle tested her. One evening, kneeling at a river's edge, she reached to refill her container. The water rippled. Her gut screamed. She jerked back as the surface exploded, jaws wide, teeth flashing. A caiman. Its lunge was silent, its power monstrous. If she had leaned forward a heartbeat longer, her leg would have been gone. She stumbled back, heart hammering, the creature thrashing before sinking beneath the surface again. The river stilled as if nothing had happened. Her hands shook as she wiped sweat from her brow. The jungle had whispered again. She had listened just in time. But how many more times would she? How many more warnings before the jungle grew tired of mercy? That night, lashed to another tree, she couldn't shake the thought. Survival wasn't victory. It was delay. A pause between one danger and the next. But somewhere between fear and despair, another thought crept in. A question she couldn't ignore. If I survive this, what will be left of me? Her eyes burned, but no tears came. Not here, not where the jungle watched everything. She pressed the dog tags to her chest, whispering to the ghosts she carried. I'll make it out. I don't know how, but I'll make it out. The jungle didn't answer. It only hummed with the weight of predators, of enemies, of silence too deep to trust. And still, Maya walked deeper. Because stopping meant dying, and dying meant their sacrifice was for nothing. And she wasn't ready to give the jungle that victory. Not yet. Why was the jungle warning her tonight? The question pressed into Maya's skull as she crouched in the shadows, heart pounding against her ribs. The air had shifted, she could feel it. The insects had gone still, the birds muted, the canopy holding its breath. And in that unnatural pause, she knew something was wrong. Not animal, not natural. Human. The enemy patrol moved through the undergrowth in a loose formation, rifles at the ready, their voices low and sharp. Maya pressed her back against the trunk of a towering ceiba tree, her body camouflaged in mud and leaves she had smeared across her skin. She barely breathed. The patrol's leader scanned the trees with a flashlight. The beam cut across ferns, trunks, vines, and then swept past her without pausing. For a moment she thought it would swing back. For a moment her muscles tensed, ready to fight, ready to die. But the light dropped and the men moved on. Their footsteps faded. Their radios crackled once, twice, then silence. Maya exhaled slowly, the knot in her chest loosening just enough to draw air again. Close, too close. It was day 45, though time had lost its shape. Days bled into nights, nights into endless waiting. Hunger gnawed at her ribs, exhaustion weighed her down, but she refused to falter. She had lasted longer than anyone expected, longer than even she believed possible. And now, something was changing. The hunted was learning to hunt. At first it had been desperation, simply avoiding, hiding, surviving. But over the past weeks she had begun watching them, the patrols, the trackers, the dogs. She studied their patterns, the routes they chose, the mistakes they made. She noticed when they avoided swamps, when they grew careless in the rain, when their laughter betrayed their fatigue. And she realized something dangerous. They were human too. They sweated, they bled, they feared. The jungle wasn't on their side any more than it was on hers. The ants bit them too. The mosquitoes drank from their veins too. The snakes didn't distinguish between uniforms. They were armed, organized, dangerous, but they were also outsiders in this place. She was becoming part of it. One night she crouched above a trail, hidden in a tree, watching as a patrol passed beneath her. Their boots sank into the mud, their curses rising with each step. One soldier wiped his forehead, muttering about the heat. Another kicked at a root, nearly stumbling. She listened to their voices, their complaints, their weary laughter. For the first time she didn't feel like prey. She felt like something else. An observer, a shadow. Almost a predator. But the jungle reminded her not to grow arrogant. That same night she moved silently along a riverbank, scanning for fish. The moonlight glinted off the water, soft and inviting. She crouched low, reaching with a sharpened spear she had crafted from bamboo. She waited, breath still, eyes searching. And then movement, a shimmer beneath the surface. She tensed, ready to strike. The water exploded. Something massive surged upward, teeth flashing in the moonlight. A bull shark. Maya staggered back, spear slipping from her grip as the creature thrashed against the bank, jaws snapping inches from her boots. She scrambled up a tree branch that arched over the water, clutching it with white-knuckled fingers as the shark writhed below, its body twisting with terrifying power. Then, as suddenly as it came, it slid back into the river, vanishing beneath the black surface. Her chest heaved, her hands trembled. She had thought the rivers safe, at least compared to the jungle floor. She had been wrong. Here, danger came from above, below, within. The water itself could rise up and devour her. And still she had no choice but to keep trusting it, for water, for fish, for life. Survival was compromise. But survival was also adaptation. By day 52, Maya's body was betraying her. She saw her ribs when she bent forward. Her arms had grown thin, her uniform loose. She burned more calories than she could gather, every hour a battle between exhaustion and necessity. She needed more food, or she would collapse long before rescue. So she changed. She set snares for small animals. She improvised fishing lines with scraps of parachute cord from the wreck. She learned to stalk iguanas and lizards, her knife flashing at the last possible moment. She gagged at the taste sometimes, but hunger didn't care. Hunger stripped pride from the menu. Each kill was small, meager, but each one was a victory. Each bite kept her on her feet another day. Yet even as she fed her body, her mind carried a different hunger. Memory. The pilot's last words, the scream of her comrade as the fire consumed the wreck, the silence afterward. At night, lashed to her tree, she would finger the dog tags pressed against her chest, whispering names into the darkness. She wasn't sure if she spoke to them or to herself, but the words mattered. They reminded her she wasn't just surviving for survival's sake. She was surviving for them. To tell their families they hadn't been forgotten. To bring home proof that they lived, they fought, they died with honor. Every day she carried them was another day of weight pressing on her chest, but also another reason not to quit. Still, the jungle offered no comfort. One morning her stick tapped the ground ahead and the ground moved. A coiled, silent, deadly, its body thick, its head broad, fangs ready. She froze, sweat dripping down her back. The snake struck faster than her eyes could follow. She jerked her arm back and felt the graze. Fangs scraped her skin, not punctured, not yet. A fraction of an inch saved her life. She stumbled away, heart hammering, every nerve screaming. If the fangs had sunk in, she would already be dying. Alone, helpless. For hours after, her hand shook uncontrollably, phantom pain crawling along her arm. She kept checking the skin, half convinced venom was already coursing through her veins. She had been spared, but spared by chance, not skill, and that truth ate at her. The jungle was teaching her, but it was also reminding her she was never in control. By day 60, Maya's perspective shifted again. She realized she had stopped counting hours. Days bled together into one long fight, but inside that fight something else had taken root. A strange pride. She wasn't supposed to survive this. No one expected her to last a week, let alone 2 months. And yet here she was, still standing, still moving, still breathing. She didn't feel invincible. Far from it. Every step felt fragile. Every moment was borrowed, but maybe that was the point. She wasn't surviving because she was stronger than the jungle. She was surviving because she was learning to bend, to break herself down into something the jungle didn't reject. At night, high in the branches, the patrols passed beneath her again. Flashlights swept, dogs barked, soldiers cursed. And Maya stayed still, her eyes open, watching. They thought they were hunting her, but she was learning their every weakness. And soon, if she wanted to live long enough to make it out, she would have to use it. The jungle had turned her into prey. But prey could learn to bite back. Why did she hesitate? The man was right there, 20 feet below her, his rifle slung lazily at his side, his face lit faintly by the glow of a cigarette. His boots sank into the mud, his radio crackled at his belt. He was alone, separated from the others for just a moment. One leap, one knife thrust, and Maya could end him. And for the first time since the crash, she realized she wanted to. Her fingers clenched around the hilt of her blade. She imagined the strike, imagined silencing his breath, imagined stealing his water, his rations, maybe even his weapon. Survival. She needed it. She deserved it. But her arm wouldn't move. Because in his weary posture, in the way his shoulders sagged under the weight of the jungle, she saw herself. Not the enemy, not a faceless hunter, just a human being caught in the same suffocating hell she was. She gritted her teeth, pulling back into the shadows of the tree. The soldier exhaled smoke, muttered something in Spanish, and walked on, fading into the darkness. Maya stayed frozen, her chest heaving with something she couldn't name. Relief, guilt, shame. She told herself it didn't matter. Killing him might have given her a day, maybe two. But killing him would have also killed something else inside her, something she wasn't ready to lose. She whispered to the dog tags against her chest. Not yet, I can't become that, not yet. The jungle didn't care. The jungle only tested. And it tested again the next morning. Maya woke to the sound of barking. Not distant this time, close. The dogs had her trail. She scrambled from her tree perch, knife in hand, heart hammering. The shouts followed, enemy voices, urgent now. She sprinted, weaving through vines, ducking under roots, her breath tearing at her lungs. The barking grew sharper. The ground trembled under their charge. She reached a stream and dove in, thrashing downstream, letting the water carry her away. Branches clawed her face, stones bruised her knees, but she didn't stop. She surfaced once, gasped, and saw the first of them appear on the bank, rifle raised, scanning. She sank beneath the surface, lungs burning, letting the current drag her further until the sounds faded. When she finally crawled onto the opposite bank, her body shook violently. She pressed her forehead to the mud, gasping, whispering to herself, still alive, still alive. But she knew it was too close. Too many close calls, the dogs, the patrols, the jungle itself. She couldn't just react anymore. She had to get ahead. She had to become something else. So she began hunting them. Not with bullets, not with steel, but with patience. She shadowed their patrols from a distance, moving parallel, learning their habits. She watched how they stopped every 30 minutes, how the dogs tired in the heat, how the soldiers quarreled when rations ran low. She saw which ones grew careless, which ones checked the trees, which ones always lagged behind. And she waited. One night she stole their fire, not the flame itself, but the knowledge. She crouched in the dark, far beyond their circle of light, watching the way they cooked, the way they laughed, the way they stripped off boots to rub their blistered feet. She memorized the sound of their coughs, the way their laughter died into silence. It wasn't cruelty, it wasn't vengeance. It was survival. She began using their mistakes to move further, to steal time. When they veered toward the rivers, she went inland. When they avoided the swamps, she slipped through them. Where they left food scraps, she scavenged. And for the first time, she felt it. Control. Not much, barely a thread, but enough to remind her that she wasn't just prey running blind. She was choosing, she was deciding. But the jungle didn't let her feel strong for long. On day 67, she found herself face to face with death again. She had been tracking a sound, subtle, rhythmic. She thought it might be an animal, maybe food. She crept through the brush, careful with every step. And then the sound stopped. Her body froze. A shadow moved. The again, coiled, its head lifted, tongue flicking the air. She realized with a sickening jolt that she had nearly stepped on it. Before she could retreat, the snake struck, lightning fast. Its fangs scraped her arm again, not puncturing, not this time, but close, too close. She stumbled backward, her breath ragged, the image of death flashing in her mind. It was a warning or a curse. She didn't sleep that night. Her body trembled, her arm phantom burning where the fangs had grazed her. She lashed herself to the tree but stared wide-eyed at the stars, whispering the same question again and again. How many more times will chance save me? The jungle didn't answer. By day 75, hunger became sharper than fear. She had lost more weight, her face hollow in the reflection of still water. Her hands shook from weakness. She needed more than scraps, more than roots. So she learned to fish. With a line twisted from cord, a hook carved from bone, she crouched by a quiet stream, waiting. The hours stretched, but at last a tug. She pulled, her heart hammering, and lifted the first fish free. Silver, small, but food. When she cooked it over a makeshift ember, the smell nearly broke her. She devoured it, the warmth filling her body, her strength returning in fragile threads. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like she was dying. And the lesson seared into her: patience feeds, impulse kills. It was the same with the enemy. The next time she saw them, she didn't just hide. She followed, hours at a distance. She tracked them through the undergrowth, marking where they stumbled, where they split apart, where they argued over maps. She wasn't just avoiding them anymore. She was learning how to outlast them. And in that realization, she felt something stir inside her chest. Not hope, not strength, something colder, something harder. The jungle had stripped her of everything she was: soldier, comrade, woman. But in that stripping, it had given her something else. Predator eyes. She lashed herself to her tree again that night, staring into the darkness. The patrol passed beneath her, their flashlights sweeping, their radios hissing. She stayed still, hidden, silent. And for the first time, she smiled. Because while they hunted her, she was already 2 steps ahead. The jungle was still her enemy, but in its silence, in its cruelty, it had taught her something the battlefield never had. Sometimes survival wasn't about strength. It was about patience. And patience, Maya realized, could kill more efficiently than bullets. Why did the silence comfort her now? Weeks ago, the hush of the jungle had been terror, a warning that something watched her, a reminder of her smallness. But tonight, bound high in the fork of a tree, Maya listened to the stillness with something like peace. No barking, no boots, no human laughter to shatter the night. For once, it was only the jungle. And she realized with a shiver, she trusted the predators here more than she trusted her own kind. The jaguar's eyes, the snake's fangs, the caiman's jaws, they were honest. They wanted only what they needed. The soldiers, they wanted more. They wanted her silence, her memory, her body left in this green abyss, never to be found. She clutched the dog tags against her chest, whispering names into the night. Sometimes she prayed. Sometimes she cursed. Mostly she just spoke, as though the metal carried her words somewhere beyond this place. Her body was gaunt now. Her uniform sagged, her bones sharp beneath her skin. But she had grown stronger in ways that couldn't be measured. Her eyes cut deeper into the dark. Her ears picked whispers from the leaves. Her breath slowed when danger prowled near. She was no longer just surviving. She was becoming something else. And she wasn't sure she liked it. Day 89 was when she felt it most. She had been fishing again, crouched by a stream, patient, careful. The line tugged and she pulled in another silver flash: food, life, strength. But she wasn't alone. Movement across the bank. She dropped low, heart tightening. Not jaguar, not caiman, human. 2 soldiers, their rifles slung, talking in hushed Spanish. She watched them from the shadows, body pressed into the mud, barely breathing. They didn't know she was there. She could have killed them. The thought came not as panic, not even as strategy, but as instinct. Knife in the throat, silent, quick. 2 rifles, 2 packs, food. Her hand gripped the blade. She froze. And then, just as quickly, she pulled back. Because she realized something terrifying. It wasn't survival driving the thought. It was temptation. The kill would have been easy, too easy, and she wasn't sure where it would end. She let them pass, their voices fatting. When the last echo was gone, she sank to her knees, pressing her hands to her face, shaking. What is happening to me? The jungle wasn't just testing her body anymore. It was testing her soul. By day 100, she had lost count of how many patrols had passed within feet of her. Some she shadowed deliberately, studying them. Others she avoided instinctively, vanishing before their dogs caught her scent. But now she stalked not just for survival, she stalked to understand herself. She watched their faces in the firelight. She listened to their laughter, their anger, their weariness. And the longer she studied, the more she felt a dangerous truth. They weren't monsters. They were boys, men, tired, hungry, scared, just like her. But unlike her, they had numbers, weapons, support. She had only herself. And yet she was still here. By day 103, the jungle struck again. The river had seemed calm, safe for once. She stepped in cautiously, scooping water with her container, eyes scanning the banks. And then the water split open beneath her. A shape massive, fast. A shark herein, dragging itself upward with jaws wide. She threw herself backward, scrambling up the roots of a tree as the bull shark snapped where her legs had been. Its body writhed, water churning, and then it vanished as quickly as it came. Maya clung to the roots, shaking, chest heaving. There was no safe place here, not in the rivers, not on the ground, not even in the trees where snakes could coil and strike without warning. Every breath was borrowed, but every borrowed breath also hardened her. By day 110, she began to notice something else. The patrols were fewer, the laughter quieter, the sweeps less frequent. Had they given up? She dared not hope, but hope slipped in anyway, a dangerous ember in her chest. And hope brought reflection. She thought about the girl she had been, the one who boarded the helicopter with steady hands and confidence in her team, the one who believed in missions, in orders, in clarity. That girl was gone. What remained was someone leaner, quieter, less human. Someone who slept in trees and ate lizards raw when fire was too risky. Someone who studied the faces of enemies not to kill them, but to understand them. Someone who feared what she was becoming, and feared even more what would happen if she survived long enough to return to the world outside. Would her family recognize her? Would she recognize herself? One night, lying in the fork of a tree, she whispered the question into the dark. Am I still me? The jungle, as always, gave no answer. By day 118, hunger broke her silence again. She tracked an iguana through the brush, moving low, slow, patient. When she struck, her knife flashed and the creature stilled. She roasted it carefully, the smell rising in the night. As she chewed, she felt strength seep back into her limbs. For the first time, she felt she could go further than just the next day. Maybe she could last indefinitely. But then came the reminder, on day 120, that indefinite wasn't the same as forever. The patrols returned, not larger, not smaller, different, sharper. Voices that carried discipline, movements that were faster, cleaner, new men, not weary ones. And with them, silence. The jungle had gone quiet again. Maya pressed her back to the tree, knife in hand, breath shallow. Because she understood now. The silence never lied. And in the silence she realized. This wasn't over, not yet. Not even close. Why was she shaking so badly? It wasn't fear this time, it was weakness. Hunger had carved her thin, hollow, trembling. Her hands slipped when she tried to grip the knife. Her knees buckled under her own weight. She had survived 130 days in this jungle, fought the predators of land and water, outmaneuvered patrols, dodged fangs and claws and bullets. But now her body itself felt like the enemy. Her reflection in the still water was almost unrecognizable. Sunken cheeks, cracked lips, wild eyes that caught too much light. Her uniform clung in tatters, her ribs stretched like the frame of some half-starved animal. She knelt, splashing water across her face, her throat so dry it burned. She wanted to drink deep gulp until the pain eased, but she didn't. She forced herself to wait, to purify, to measure every sip, because recklessness here meant death. And still her body shook. She whispered, almost begging, just one more day, just one more. But the jungle had no mercy. That night, as she tried to sleep lashed to her tree, she woke to a sound that made her blood freeze. Barking. Not distant, not faint, right below her. She pressed herself into the trunk, her chest so tight it hurt. The dogs whined, sniffing, circling. Boots crunched the undergrowth. A flashlight beam swept the branches, closer, closer, cutting across her ankles. Her breath stopped. Her heart thrashed so hard she thought they would hear it. The soldier with the light tilted his head, frowning. He muttered something in Portuguese, lifted the beam higher. And then one of the dogs barked in the opposite direction. The men cursed, turned and moved off, dragged by the animal's pull. The beam dropped, the light faded. Maya clutched the bark so hard it cut her palms, tears welling unbidden. She wanted to collapse, to sob, to let the terror break her into pieces. But she didn't. She bit her lip, swallowing the sound, her whole body trembling. Close, too close. And she knew they were tightening the net again. By dawn she was moving. Every step burned. Her legs quivered, her stomach knotted with emptiness. But she moved. She crossed streams, climbed roots, vanished into foliage. Her eyes darted constantly, her ears tuned to every sound. And then came the silence again. The jungle's warning. She crouched, knife in hand, sweat dripping down her brow. Leaves shifted, voices whispered, boots approached. But this time, she didn't hide immediately. She waited. The patrol passed within 20 feet. She counted 3 men. No dogs. One lagged behind, wiping his brow, muttering about the heat. Her hand tightened on the knife. Her chest heaved, her mind screamed. This was the moment she had resisted, the line she had refused to cross, but her body was dying and survival had stripped everything soft from her. She stepped forward, then stopped. Her reflection flashed in her mind, the gaunt, wild-eyed woman staring from the water. She didn't recognize her, didn't trust her, and she realized with horror that if she killed, if she let herself cross that threshold, she might never come back. Her knife trembled in her hand. She whispered to the dog tags, "Not like this." And she pulled back. The soldier moved on, never knowing how close he had been. Maya sank to her knees, pressing her forehead to the earth, shaking violently. Her knife slipped from her hand, sinking into the soil. She had chosen humanity again, but humanity was starving her. Day 138 nearly broke her. She was following the edge of a river, scanning for fish when her foot slipped. She crashed into the water, the current dragging her under. She flailed, gasping, slamming against rocks, her chest burning. She clawed her way up, coughing, lungs searing, and froze. Shapes moved beneath her, sleek, fast. Piranhas. They circled, darting, brushing her skin with scales like knives. She thrashed toward the bank, her legs kicking wildly. Pain sliced across her calf, a bite, small but sharp, blood blooming in the water. The frenzy began instantly. She pulled herself up the bank, clawing at roots, dragging her body from the river as the water below churned red with teeth. She collapsed in the mud, panting, trembling, her calf stinging, blood dripping. She tore a strip from her sleeve and bound it tight, whispering through clenched teeth, "Not like this. Not yet." She lay there for hours, staring at the canopy, every breath shallow, every nerve screaming. The jungle wasn't just trying to kill her anymore. It was trying to break her. But she refused. By day 145, something inside her shifted again. Her body was weaker than ever, but her mind, sharpened by fear, carved by hunger, tempered by pain, felt like steel. She moved silently, shadowing patrols, mapping their routes, learning their habits. And she realized something. They were searching less. Their sweeps were slower, their dogs fewer. Their voices carried more frustration than urgency. They thought she was already dead. The thought sparked a fragile flame in her chest. Not victory, not relief, something smaller, something more dangerous. Hope. But hope was not enough. She still had miles to go, a border to cross, a promise to keep. At night, she pressed the dog tags to her lips, whispering the same vow she had whispered since the crash. "I'll get you home." And in the silence that followed, she finally understood the truth the jungle had been teaching her all along. Survival wasn't about strength, or killing, or even hope. It was about endurance. About standing when everything tried to make you fall. About breathing when the world tried to take your air. About holding on, not because you were unbreakable, but because breaking meant surrender. And surrender was never an option. Why did the horizon look so close, yet feel so impossibly far? Maya crouched on a ridge of tangled roots starring through the breaks in the canopy. Beyond the endless green she thought she saw it. Lighter terrain, open land, maybe even smoke from a distant campfire. Brazil, the border, safety. Her heart clenched but her legs barely held her. 157 days since the crash. Her uniform was a ragged skin. Her boots were cracked and torn. Her body was a map of cuts, scars, and insect bites. Her frame was thin, hollowed, every step carved from pain. And yet she moved. Because stopping wasn't an option. She tightened the dog tags in her grip until the metal cut her palm. She whispered, "Almost there." But the jungle had heard her, and it hated arrogance. That night, as she lashed herself to a tree, she dreamed of home. Not war, not death, but home. A kitchen table, a mother's hands, laughter she hadn't heard in years. She woke with tears drying on her face, ashamed of them, because tears here weren't water, they were waste. And when she woke, the jungle had its reminder ready. A noise. Not dogs this time, not boots. Voices close. She pressed against the bark, heart hammering, as 3 enemy soldiers walked below. Their rifles slung, their steps heavy with fatigue. They weren't searching now, they were passing through, talking low. She stayed still, silent, letting them go. But when their footsteps faded, she didn't relax. Because for the first time, she realized she wasn't afraid of them anymore. She was afraid of herself. She had wanted to strike, not because she needed food or water, but because it was easy, because she could. The thought shook her more than the soldiers ever had. The jungle had hardened her, but in doing so it had hollowed her, and she wondered, if she crossed that border, if she made it home, what would walk out of this jungle? Would it be her? Or something the jungle had forged? She swallowed the thought and pushed on. By day 160, the terrain changed. The deep green thinned into patches of open ground, grasslands creeping into the jungle's edge. But open ground meant exposure. No canopy to vanish into. No vines to hide her tracks. Every step could betray her. She waited until nightfall. Moved slow, belly to the earth, her body a shadow against the moonlit field. Halfway across, the silence broke. A crack, a branch. Her chest froze. She turned, and there it was. Not enemy, not patrol. A jaguar. It stalked her from the edge of the tree line, muscles rippling, eyes glowing in the dark. Not curious this time, not hesitant, hungry. Maya's knife felt like a toy in her hand. She crouched low, her breath shallow. If it came, she had no chance. For long minutes, predator and survivor stared at each other. Her chest burned with the need to breathe. Her legs trembled with fatigue. And then the jaguar turned, slipped back into the jungle. Gone. Maya collapsed into the grass, trembling, her face pressed to the earth. The jungle wasn't letting her go, not yet. Day 163 nearly killed her. She had been foraging near a river, testing roots when her vision blurred. Her legs gave way, her body collapsing into the mud. She clawed forward, gasping, her throat like sand. The world tilted, blackened. She lay there for hours, maybe longer, drifting between sleep and death. Only one thought kept her tethered, the weight of the tags against her chest. She saw their faces in her mind, her pilot, her comrades, their last moments burned into her memory. She whispered, barely conscious, "Not yet, not without you." And somehow she moved again. She stumbled forward one step, then another, her body running on nothing but stubbornness. By day 165, the voices changed. She heard shouting again, but not enemy shouts, not harsh Spanish or Portuguese. Different, clearer. She froze, crouched low, her mind racing. Was it a trick, another patrol, another trap? She crept closer, crawling through undergrowth, her body trembling with every move. And then she saw them. Camouflage helmets, Brazilian flags stitched on their shoulders. Her chest clenched, her breath caught. Rescue. For long minutes she stayed hidden, her mind spinning. Could it be real? Could it be safe? Or was it another mirage the jungle used to test her? Finally she stepped forward, weak, shaking, barely able to raise her hand. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Americana, help." The soldiers turned, rifles snapping up, then froze. Because what they saw didn't look like a soldier. It looked like a ghost. Her uniform in tatters, her frame skeletal, her eyes hollow, burning with fever and madness and something harder than either. One soldier lowered his rifle slowly. Another spoke, disbelief in his voice. "No one survives out here this long." Maya swayed on her feet, clutching the dog tags in her hand. And then finally she collapsed. The jungle had let her go. But only barely. Why did the light hurt so much? Maya squinted as the sun broke over the canopy, her body swaying inside the helicopter that carried her out. The roar of the rotors thudded through her chest, too loud, too alien after months of nothing but the hum of insects and the cries of predators. She sat strapped in, her head against the window, her eyes catching the endless green below. The Amazon, her prison, her grave, her teacher. Her reflection in the glass startled her. Hollow cheeks, skin burned and bitten, eyes so sharp they seemed to cut through the reflection itself. She looked like someone else, someone the jungle had carved. The Brazilian soldier across from her watched her silently. He had offered water, food, a blanket. She had accepted none. Her stomach couldn't bear it yet, her throat still raw. But more than that, she wasn't ready. To eat, to rest, to soften. Because soft things broke here. She closed her eyes and clutched the dog tags in her hand. The weight of them hadn't lessened. If anything, it felt heavier now, because she had carried them across death and hunger and silence, and now she had to return them. The helicopter landed at a forward base. Men in uniforms rushed forward, medics, officers, translators. They spoke too fast, asked too much. She didn't answer. She simply let them guide her to a cot, their hands gentle, almost fearful. One medic whispered, "How long was she out there?" Another replied, 5 months, more, impossible." They thought she couldn't hear, but she did. And she wanted to laugh, because nothing about the jungle was impossible. It was inevitable. Her body broke before their eyes. She vomited when they gave her broth, trembled when they touched her calf wound, winced at light too bright. They said she had lost 40 pounds. They said it was a miracle she had no infection, no fever. They called her survivor, warrior, hero. She hated those words, because she knew the truth. She hadn't beaten the jungle, she had endured it. She hadn't conquered her enemies, she had outlasted them. And in that outlasting, something inside her had died. The days blurred into treatment. IV drips, whispered questions, endless rest. She woke screaming sometimes, jaguar eyes burning in her dreams, dogs barking in her ears. Once she woke lashing out, a knife in her hand she hadn't realized she still gripped. The medic stepped back, wide-eyed. She whispered, "Sorry," but her voice cracked like broken glass. Weeks passed before she was strong enough to stand without trembling. She learned to walk again, each step foreign on solid ground. Food came slowly, weight returning in careful increments, but her eyes never softened. They stayed sharp, wary, always searching for movement in shadows. And when the debrief began, she told them only what mattered. The missile, the crash, the patrols, the days counted until numbers blurred, the threats she avoided, the ones she endured. She spoke of survival but not of fear, not of the moments she wanted to give up, not of the temptation to kill. Those belonged to her. When she placed the dog tags into the colonel's hand, she felt her chest crack. Her promise was fulfilled, but the weight didn't lift. It never would. One evening, weeks later, she stood at the edge of the base. The jungle stretched before her, endless, alive, whispering. The soldiers who had guarded her now gave her space. They had seen the way she looked into the green, not with hatred, not even with fear. With recognition. Because the jungle was part of her now. And she was part of it. She closed her eyes and remembered the silence. The silence that warned her, the silence that hunted her, the silence that sometimes, impossibly, protected her. She thought of the jaguar that let her live, the snake that missed by a fraction, the river that gave water but tried to take her blood, the patrols that searched, sweated, cursed, and never found her. She thought of herself, weak, gaunt, trembling, yet walking, always walking. And she whispered, almost a prayer, "Thank you." Not gratitude, not forgiveness, just acknowledgement. Because the jungle hadn't been her enemy. It had been her teacher. And she had learned the only lesson it ever gave. That survival isn't about victory. It isn't about strength or weapons or numbers. It's about refusing to stop. Refusing to surrender. Refusing to let the silence swallow you. Months later, when she returned home, people asked her the same question again and again. How did you survive? She never gave them details. She never spoke of the eyes in the dark, the fangs in the mud, the hunger that gnawed bone. She never told them of the temptation to kill, the nights she whispered to the dead, the way her humanity frayed like cloth in rain. She only said the truth. I kept walking. And when they pressed further, asking about dignity, about strength, about heroism, she would shake her head. Because she knew those words didn't belong in the jungle. What belonged there was silence. What belonged there was endurance. What belonged there was this. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And then it walks on.